I'd love to be involved with anything else with cats. Like I've adopted one that was from it like a stray, but that's about as far as it's gone so far. So
Well, they say it's a slippery slope. So you got one, and then maybe you'll get two, and then maybe, we'll see what happens going forward. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watch Our Pass. Today I'm talking to director Sarah Jayne about Cats of Malta, which is coming to digital on October 3rd, 2023. I'm going to talk to her right now, and while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. That helps me out a lot. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got director Sarah Jayne talking about Cats of Malta, which is coming to digital on October 3rd, 2023. It's a documentary about cats and the beautiful scenery of Malta. What's not to like? If you're interested in either of those, you will love this documentary. I am excited to talk to you about it. I'm excited to find out what the impetus of this documentary was. So let's get going, and thanks so much for joining me.
thanks for having me on the show, David.
Of course, of course. So, first question, what's the story here? Was this just like a? I know you filmed, I think, Machination in Malta, so I think that's where you're resident. Did you just have another quarantine movie in the books? You're just trying to figure out what to do, and you saw these cats, and like, hey, I wonder what the story is, and you had all this free time. Like, what was this? What was the impetus for this?
We actually shot Machination after Cats of Malta the same year, like a couple of months apart.
Oh wow.
My cat's clawing stuff. Okay, so yeah, we shot it just a few months after. Like we shot the main interviews of Cats of Malta because what happened was we were living in Malta at the time. We were there for 4 years in total. But while we were living there, we wanted to shoot a film, and we bought our own camera because we wanted to actually shoot our own film. Usually we hire a DP, and so we thought, oh, we'll buy our own camera. And then the pandemic hit, and we weren't allowed to film in groups. So we had an idea for Machination, but that was on hold.
Mhm.
So what are we going to do with this now? And we're like, oh, we want to go test the camera. So let's go test it on some cats. So we started, we went to a park where we knew there was a lot of cat colonies, and we just followed cats around with cameras to see what would happen, if, like what that looks like in the day, at night with filters and things like that, and just experimented. And then we realized, oh, we've got a lot of cat footage. And I started seeing people posting like, oh, I can't feed my cats on social media, people that I knew that I worked with before the pandemic. I'm like, oh, there's lots of cat feeders that I know and people in sanctuaries. And then I saw the guy painting the cat statue, Matthew Pandolfino, in the same park we shot the cats. I thought that might be interesting to talk to him, and it just became a documentary in the end.
I love that. I love how you were just like naturally drawn to cats because they are strangely photogenic. Like it's just whatever they do, it's always fun and interesting. And then that just kind of like spearheaded into this documentary itself.
Yes.
That's awesome. And so one thing I was curious about, I was hoping for a little bit more history about like how the cats got to Malta. If you figured out like while you were making this documentary, like why are there so many cats in Malta other than maybe it's an island paradise and they just like it there?
I was asking that to the people in the documentary, and not a lot of people knew. Like I was saying to them, how did they get on the island? Because Malta's an island. Like, how did cats come across the sea? Did they come with the Ottomans? It was like a joke. Like, how did the cats come to Malta? Everyone's like, oh, I don't really know. I don't know. So I couldn't really answer that question. But we believe that somehow they just started breeding. Obviously, they were kept there. What I know from Maltese tradition was people used to keep cats on farms to actually keep away the rats. So then obviously if it's an older person on a farm and they pass away and the cat's not neutered, obviously it goes away somewhere else and it breeds, and then it just keeps going from there. That's what I think, but we weren't sure. But we know that people do keep them in farms. So we think that's probably how it started.
That makes perfect sense.
People not neutering, yeah.
And there probably aren't a lot of, I don't know, predators for cats or potential problems for cats. So it's just easy for them to grow and grow and grow.
Yes, because not like in Australia where there's other animals that are bigger than them that can kill them. There's only like small lizards and little things like that. Maybe echidnas in Malta. There's not a lot of wildlife. It's not like Australia where we have bats the size of cats. So nothing's going to take them on, I don't think, besides cars and construction. So and people.
And now I'm just curious, like, is there a trajectory where the cats overtake the Maltese people? Because it's like 450,000 Maltese and then 100,000 cats. It seems like it could be on track.
It's going to be a cat island soon. There'll be no people left.
Yeah, then it'll be like then Cats of Malta will just be like the cats that rule Malta. It'll be perfect.
Yes, that'll be
Uh,
awesome. Actually, that'd be
yeah,
cool.
no, it'd be interesting. And so you mentioned that they were brought for like farms to take care of pests and things like that. I was actually curious, like with that many cats, are there many like pests in Malta, or do they all just get kind of like taken out before they get started?
I have no idea. Like when I was living there, just mosquitoes were a problem, things like that. And sometimes you see the occasional lizard, like the small, tiny ones. So I'm not sure. Like that's another aspect that we could have touched in the documentary, but we didn't go down that route because we just wanted more of the stories from the people that look after them. That's something I could have probably brought a more environmental element in, but I didn't. So I'm not sure about the pest side of it.
I guess anecdotally, did you ever have any like mice in your house when you were there?
I didn't have a cat when I was there. I have a cat now, but yeah, I didn't have any mice. But I know I had spiders and things like that, just like small lizards running in and out because I had like an old stone house. Yeah, but nothing, no, not really.
Okay. And then a cat didn't just like adopt itself into your life while you were there?
Unfortunately, no, not when I was in a few different places and there were no cats there. Hang on, he
Oh,
wants to go out.
okay.
There you go, baby. Okay. Yeah, so no, I didn't have anything like that. So I wish
Oh,
I had
that's
more cats around me. Like there were feeders feeding around, but I didn't really have any cats wandering in and out of my house. I did actually have that when we were in Melbourne. We had this cat that used to just come into our apartment, eat, and then just go, but not in Malta.
interesting. And so a lot of the scenes in the film are like urban scenes, right? You're in, a big city, the cats are all there. Are they also prevalent like out in the countryside? Like I guess maybe more feral out there, or is it really just they kind of like gather around where people live and just kind of like have a symbiotic relationship there?
I know that there are areas that are more because I lived in Mjar, which was like the end of the island, sort of near the cliffs. And there were cats like even being fed on dirt roads, and you go up like big windy roads, and you just see like a little cat house, and people are feeding them, and people like make like little boxes for them. So even on deserted roads where there's like hardly any houses, you'll see cat boxes. So yeah, I'm guessing that they're just everywhere. But as I think people always try and feed them. I don't know how actually wild they are, but I think they always have a connection to humans somehow.
Yeah, no, and if my kids were there, they would definitely be feeding them all the time. So that probably how they get their food is just like
Yeah.
people just love cats. It's kind of how it is.
And tourists walk around with food in their bags as well. I've had people message me saying, "Oh, when I was in Malta, I spent all my like money on buying food for the cats so I could go to St. Julian's and feed them." So all
That
my money
is
from my trip was like going on cat food. I'm like, oh my God.
that is an industry. I love it. That is definitely a part of the Maltese economy. Um,
Yeah.
so with the documentary, I know you mentioned that you talked to a lot of people. Were there any stories that you just like couldn't fit in, or were there stories that you like really wanted to, but just didn't fit the tone, or maybe it wasn't like fleshed out enough? Like how much footage do you have on the cutting room floor?
One more interview, which was Thomasina Cat Sanctuary. Unfortunately, they were lovely. They were like our first interview, and they were one of the first interviews, along with the little boy with Isaac. But we cut it because, firstly, it was in Maltese, and we didn't like the footage. We didn't think it was good enough to be in the final cut, so we cut that one. And I also had to choose between that one or another sanctuary because then I thought, oh, but there's this other sanctuary that said yes too. So then I had another sanctuary called Animal Guardians. Both people were very lovely and very welcoming for us to come in with a camera, so we shot both. But then I had to make a decision of which one am I going to use. But I chose Animal Guardians because they actually do cat therapy and they talk a lot about their mental health. So I wanted more of that. So in the film, so I chose that one, and plus the footage looked better than the other one. So and
That
it was
seems like
also in English. We wanted to roll with English, so like, oh, we have to cut this one. But it is going to be a special feature on the DVD, and it is on the Vimeo demand rental if you buy that. So,
there we
and
go.
other than that, we just probably have a bit more footage about from cats. We have like some again, there's another bonus feature on the Vimeo on demand, and will be on the DVD as well of more just walking around with a feeder in one of the other gardens in one of the palaces, St. Anton. So just little things like that, and probably just more little clips that we didn't use.
Perfect. Yeah, no, more cats is always a good thing. I do think that that was the right decision. Between those two, you had to make a tough choice, but it sounds like you probably chose the better one. But people can see that. People can see both of those interviews and make their own call
Yeah,
on video on demand or on the DVD later.
yeah.
So one thing I was curious, like in this film, you ended up narrating it. Were you always planning on narrating it, or does it just kind of how it ended up because of the way that indie filmmaking is? And you're like, I need a narrator. I don't have any budget. Let's go.
Yeah, like we did a cut of it, and then we showed the other producers, like the other people involved in the film, and they were like, it needs something else. Like you need to actually introduce the film or do something. You need a narrator or something to actually explain what's going on at the start and what the story is. So then we tried it, and yeah, we actually we did, that was like one of the last things we did. Like we did a rough of it, like of me talking. Me and Ivan tried to record it. So I tried to do it super low indie. And then we took it to our sound designer in Australia, and we did it in a studio properly when we were visiting over there around Christmas time. So on Christmas, we were filming voiceover in a studio in Melbourne, and it sounds much better. And they actually helped me like project my voice and things like that. So it's, yeah, something that was added in at the end, because they were saying, oh, you need to like introduce it. It needs to be something to tie it in. So I was like, oh, let's just make it my story then. And I had to write it and everything and add it in.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The next thing I was gonna ask is, you also appeared on camera and kind of like made yourself a little bit of a through line in this film. So I guess this all kind of came about at the same time.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. I didn't like, they said that, oh, I think it'd be better if you narrated it. And I was like, oh, okay. So then it started like my story. And I thought, well, the reason why we went to Malta was because I did want to find my family. I've met my family before, but I wanted to actually spend more time with my family. So we moved there. We ended up staying there for 4 years, because I've only been there for 3 months before, like a longest period of time. So I was like, okay, this is a good way to actually get into Europe if I need anything. So we relocated from Melbourne. If we ever need anything, my family's there. I can speak the language. It'll be easier to move to Europe there and then see where we want to go. So yeah, it just sort of happened that way. And I think it's good because it's more of a personal, kind of like my love letter to Malta now in a way, to the cats and the island. So I like it. I don't normally like being on camera, but that's just how it panned out.
Yeah, it's always good to kind of rip that band-aid and try something new, right? That's definitely a good skill to have. And also seems like a very good decision to go to Malta right before like the world shut down, because if you're going to pick a place to kind of like quarantine, and Malta seems like a wonderful place.
Yeah, Malta wasn't that bad. Like they weren't really abiding by the rules so much. Like we were in Amjara at the time. We were up near the beach area, and it was more like a village feel. People are a bit more old school. They don't really like, really more chilled. And it's like the pandemic's happening. I'm walking down the street and looking at the bars, and there's old men playing chess together in the pub. And I'm just like, it's a pandemic. So they were very much more relaxed than other places, I think, in Europe. But then they started doing that whole countdown. Oh, we have 50 cases today. There wasn't even a lot of cases, but they were just always reporting, and it just got more and more intense. And then that's when they started saying you can't film in groups of 6, more than groups of 6. So like, oh, let's just shoot one interview at a time. It's only one person that we're interviewing. And yeah, because that, and then it just like no one knew what was happening with the pandemic. So we're just like, oh, let's just roll with this, and we can still shoot cats and stuff like that. So that's how it came about. And then when that opened, we shot Machination, because then we could actually do a narrative. So we were one of the first films to shoot, one of the first production companies in Malta to actually shoot a feature film in the pandemic. So yeah.
Very cool. And yeah, I mean, Machination didn't seem like a large production, but I guess just any sort of production needed, to get approval or wait, whatever the protocols were at the time.
Yeah, because we always shoot with like 6 people crew anyway, maximum 6 to 8 people with the actors. We're always like small crews, small locations. So for us, having a crew wasn't like, oh my God, how are we going to bring 50 people to set? It was like, no, we always shoot with 6 people, max to 8 anyway, so we can do it. So we did it.
Exactly. And so the film, I assume it has has it premiered in Malta? I assume it has. I assume maybe that was the first place. How did that go? And were there cats at the premiere?
Oh, I wish there was cats. And I wish we premiered in Malta. What we had in Malta was test screenings. So we were not ready with the film, but we were ready to leave Malta, and we had the film almost ready. We didn't have the sound and everything, and the narration was the old narration, like the rusty one that we didn't record properly. So we didn't have the sound and the color done properly. We did all that kind of in Australia. So we had a test screening because we knew we were going to leave. So we had everyone that was involved in the production. We rented out a cinema, and we rented out an indie cinema, an art house cinema, so 2 cinemas, and we had a couple of nights. I think we had 3 nights. We had 2 at the art house, and they were really good. Like the last one we had, I was actually sick. I had gastro, so I was in bed for like 2 days, and I wasn't well for the very last one, so I missed it. And it was packed. Like the last one was packed. And the first one we had a Q&A with the people that were involved in the film, so we got to talk about animal welfare, and they got to see like a rough cut of the film. But other than that, it hasn't premiered. We hadn't a premiere. It's just started streaming on September 21 in Malta and Ireland, and now it's going to the US, and then it will go to like France, Luxembourg, and a couple of other places.
Very nice. And it's just slowly spreading like cat mania. What has the reception been like for the places that has already come out yet?
We had a screening in LA, actually, a screening. Someone actually booked the film, which, because we're up for that, and they said it was really emotional. People were crying, and people were like really laughing at some parts, because it is a bit of an emotional roller coaster. So yeah, on the 19th, before we had the premiere, before we had the release in Malta, we had a screening in LA, so we're up
Oh,
for that as well. So because we like it to be, it's a film that's good to be watched with a group of people, and I think live is always best. Like if it was longer, I would have pushed for a cinema release. Like I would have tried. I don't know how to do a cinema release. I've never done one, but I would have tried for a cinema release. But it's only like an hour long, so we thought the best thing to do would be live and virtual screenings. So we didn't actually have like the premiere was we had a US premiere in Ohio last October, so it's coming on to a year since the US premiere.
oh
But in
wow.
Malta, we didn't. We didn't really get into any major festivals in Europe either, which was interesting.
That is surprising. I mean, cats seem to just be an easy kind of adorable, lovable hook. So I'm surprised that it
Yeah.
didn't get any festivals. But yeah, who knows? Now people can see it and judge for themselves.
Yes.
And one thing I was also curious is like, is there any plans for a sequel to kind of follow up on some of the characters that we met and some of the situations happening, or is this kind of like this is your love letter to Malta and now you're going to move on to other projects?
I think I'm moving on, but I always go to different countries and I go, oh, cats here. Like we could even do a Cats of Zadar in Croatia. They've got a big problem with stray cats. So I'm always like, oh my God, do I need to make a Cats of Zadar? When I went traveled to Portugal, there was cats everywhere. Like I could do cats of like Sylvies and Portugal. There's always cats everywhere. And even with Cats of Malta, people would message me, oh, I know someone who has cats. Oh, I look after a colony of cats. Would you come and film me? And I'm like, the documentary's over. But I also know of people in Malta who would love to tell their story. Like there's a lady who makes pottery there. She has her own studio and she has two cats there, and her Instagram is so funny. She's a photographer as well. And I'm just like, oh, she would have been great in the documentary as well. There's more people, but I couldn't really fit everything in. Maybe I would have made the film longer. It would have been good for cinema. But yeah, like there's other people, but at the moment I'm not looking to make another one of Cats of Malta. But it could even be a TV series because it could actually be broken down into episodes.
Yeah, I
There's a
mean,
lot, there's a
or
lot possible.
like a travel show, like you said, like there's cats in all sorts of places. I could totally see this being like a a 1 hour travel show in various places. Cats of Croatia, cats of Japan, cats of wherever. It seems like a perfect setup.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd love that.
Very cool. So and like I said, I watched it with my kids. They loved it, and they both had questions for you. So I'm going to read their questions. Uh,
Cool.
so my oldest daughter was curious. Do you have any cats at home?
Hmm.
Excellent. How many? One, two,
I
three,
have one
five?
cat, and his name's Ficho, and he's Ginger. He's about 1 year old, and we've had him for almost a year, and he's
Excellent.
very sweet.
Excellent, excellent. And my middle daughter asked, "Do you like cats? Are you obsessed with cats?"
I was a dog person when I was younger. I grew up with dogs, but when I went to Malta, I fell in love with cats, so now I'm a cat lover.
Wow. All right. Interesting. Interesting. A dog person converted into a cat person.
Hmm.
Well, so actually, I guess that is a question. Are there dogs on Malta? I assume there would be, but that's not the subject of the movie. So,
And there are dogs in Malta. I saw a lot in cages, which was really sad on farms.
oh,
But there are a lot of people walking dogs, and you see a lot of restaurants where dogs are on tables as well, having dinner with people, which is quite interesting. There's kind of like very welcomed. And as well in Croatia here, like I've seen dogs, actually waiters bringing water for dogs here. So the dogs are very much welcomed. I don't see a lot of cats in Zagreb, actually. There's only like one little sanctuary, like in Upper Town, where they have like some boxes, but everything else, I don't see that many.
all right. Well, I feel like this should start to become a series, like cats or dogs of various places. I feel like you could totally just do that for a few years and kind of travel around the world. It's a nice
I'd
excuse,
love
but
that.
awesome. So I know we have limited time. I'm going to switch. There's some very lightweight questions about the film. I want to see how your personal experiences map to things in the movie. You can feel free to skip them, but they should be pretty answerable. The first question was, are you a dog or a cat person? It sounds like you were a dog person and now you're a cat person, maybe reluctantly.
Yes, I had my dog for a while, and she passed away before a while. I think while I was in Malta, and I had her for a long time. She was like my shadow, so it was really sad to leave her behind. But then, yes, I became in tune with with cats, sorry, in Melbourne because I had an experience when my friend died, and the cat I was living with was acting very strange. Like she's usually very angry at me, and she was like very chill. And I'm like, okay, there's something magical about cats.
Yeah.
And then I sort of like started to see that and hearing about people's stories, and I'm like, all right, cats. And then during the documentary as well, like between takes, I'm like patting the cats and it's like really calming because they're meowing. Like they're very beautiful and I got used to them. Like I used to be very jumpy, like, oh my God, it's moving. But now I'm like, it's okay. It's not too bad now. I'm
Very
better.
different mentality than dogs. Yeah, I'm more of a dog person, but I can appreciate like a chill cat just like hanging out with you as you're like watching TV, or like you said, you were just watching people with the king. So,
Yeah.
um, did you have any cats growing up?
I only remember one cat growing up, and it wasn't a good experience because I remember we came home and she'd actually eaten her kittens and she was
Oh,
screaming at us. And I remember there was blood everywhere. And that's the only experience I have of cats when I was younger. That wasn't a good one. I'm like, she ate the kittens. And I had to try and figure out why she ate the kittens. I couldn't work it out. Mum had to tell me. I'm like, oh my goodness. And that's the only time we had a cat. From then on, we had dogs. So growing up, I had dogs.
that I mean, that sounds like a traumatic experience. It sounds like it could be a horror movie. That is terrible.
Yes. She'd
Um, next
eaten the kittens.
next question is, have you ever fed a stray cat?
Yes, I have. I feed the one. I actually one of those people that walks around with dry food in my bags to actually feed the cats.
And you still do that now, or you just did that in Malta?
In Malta, I do it, yeah. But if I sometimes if I see a cat in the village and I've got something, but yeah, I don't really carry cat food around with me. I'm always like, oh, I wish I had something for you, but I don't. I don't see
Oh,
a lot of them here.
yeah, that makes sense. One of the more interesting characters, or people, I guess they're all people in your documentary, is this kid that is very involved in like helping cats. He started his own organization. Were you involved in any sort of like organizations, not necessarily cat related, but anything as a youth? Did you have any like, I guess causes that you were passionate about?
As a youth, no, because I was always dancing or drawing and doing that kind of thing, more artistic pursuits. But in Malta, before I started working, I was actually volunteering at a cat sanctuary. So the start of the footage with me when I had the blonde hair, I don't know why we all different hairstyles. That's actually me at a cat sanctuary where I was volunteering. So I did that for a while in Malta, but as a kid, no, I didn't really. I just had my dogs all the time following me around, but I never really did any volunteer work.
Very nice. And the last question is, it sounds like this was before, but I was wondering, has this movie like made you become more involved in like cat or animal rescue organizations just because you had so much exposure and saw the work that they were doing?
I just saw your cat ears. That's really cool. I had some for CatCon last time too. Um, I'm more aware of it now. So whenever I see things like a Malta and things like that, where they're like, oh, can you share the petition about, something's happening? I'll go and investigate, find out what's going on, then I'll share it. So it just made me more aware about what's happening in the community as well. I'd love to be involved with anything else with cats. Like I've adopted one that was from it like a stray, but that's about as far as it's gone so far. So
Well, they say it's a slippery slope. So you got one, and then maybe you'll get two, and then maybe, we'll see what happens going forward.
I want another one. I just don't have a big enough apartment and it's hard to move at the moment.
Yeah, no,
But
that makes sense.
rent's going up.
Space is always a consideration. So the film is out on October 3rd, 2023 in America. You were out promoting it. I imagine you are probably working on other projects. You have other things in mind. Unfortunately, not sequels to this film, but something else. After people see Cats of Malta, what can they look forward next from you?
I'm actually trying to promote something that's also made in Malta, which is a bit tricky because it's more of a niche. It's like No Woman is an Island, and it's a film about women's rights in Malta. I was actually there last week when Cats of Malta was released for the screening, just trying to get a distributor for that. And then me and Ivan, we shot something in Berlin like September. We shot another feature, so that's called After the Act. And we have another film from last year as well called For Fans, which is about a girl who turns to camming. So that's coming out soon as well. But Ivan's, in the moment, he's like editing 3 different features and a short film. I don't edit, so I
Oh
probably should
wow.
learn because we're really slow at getting our films out because there's only one editor and there's only 2 of us. So, but yeah, so
Yeah,
After the Act and For Fans is probably what's coming next. I don't know which one. And Renotti, the short film, might come out before all of those. So.
very cool. All sorts of things. And yeah, I mean that does seem like a log jam in your creative process. But I don't
Yeah.
know. It seems like you're at least making interesting films and doing what you enjoy. So keep doing
Yes.
that. And while people wait for these future films, they can check out Cats of Malta coming to US on October 3rd, 2023. It'll pretty much be digital. Maybe you can see like a pop-up screen here and there, but most likely you'll watch it digitally. But watch it, see how beautiful Malta is, see how fun these cats are, and see more of Sarah Jayne's narration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was director Sarah Jayne talking about Cats of Malta, which is coming to digital on October 3rd, 2023. It's a documentary about cats and beautiful scenery. What's not to like? So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.